Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Are you ready to learn more about black soldier fly farming?
I'm ready.
Today we're diving deep into a webinar from the experts at Mana Insect.
Great source.
So you're thinking about starting your own black soldier fly farm.
Yeah.
You're probably wondering, should you start outdoors or go straight for climate control?
It's a question we get a lot.
We've got the insights to help you decide.
This webinar really breaks it all down. And, it actually emphasizes one thing above all else.
Oh,
Regardless of your setup, the most critical factor for success is having a systematic process.
interesting. I would have thought the setup itself was the most important.
Nope.
So what exactly do they mean by a systematic process?
Well, think of it like this. You need a well-defined plan for every single aspect of your operation.
Okay.
They stress the importance of really meticulous record keeping,
Uh-huh.
like logging everything.
Everything.
Yeah, from temperatures and feed amounts to even the number of larvae in each batch. It's all about collecting data, analyzing it, and then you have to actually adjust your practices based on what you observe.
So it's not just about having a plan, it's about actually implementing and refining it as you go.
Exactly.
It's like a continuous loop of learning and improving.
And this is where a lot of beginners kind of stumble.
Yeah, I can see that.
They might have a general idea of what they want to do, but they don't have like a solid system in place
Right.
to track their progress, identify any problems early on, and make those critical adjustments.
That makes a lot of sense. And I imagine having that systematic approach from the very beginning would be especially important if you're thinking about scaling up later on.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that this webinar does so well.
Oh, yeah.
It provides like specific and actionable advice that you can apply, whether you're starting with like a super small outdoor setup or a much more advanced climate-controlled module.
Speaking of climate control, this is another area where the webinar really dives deep, right?
Total.
I'm kind of curious to learn more about some of the nuances they highlight.
One of the most fascinating points they make is actually about the difference between air temperature and substrate temperature.
Okay.
It's such a crucial detail that honestly a lot of beginners overlook,
Mm-hmm.
but it can have a huge impact on like the growth and development of your larva.
I have to admit, I'm not completely clear on that distinction between the two.
Oh, okay.
Can you kind of break it down for me a little?
Yeah, for sure. So think about the substrate as the material your larvae are actually living in and feeding on.
Okay.
It's their home and food source, all in one.
Right.
For the best growth, that substrate needs to be within a very specific temperature range, ideally between 30 and 32 degrees Celsius.
Got it. That makes sense. But what does that have to do with air temperature? Wouldn't they be like pretty closely linked?
That's what makes it interesting. So the webinar explains that, especially in the first few days of a larva's life, the substrate can actually be a lot cooler than the air around it. It's because water, which is crucial for maintaining that ideal moisture in the substrate, acts as a coolant.
Okay. Interesting. So to make sure the substrate reaches that perfect 30 to 32 degrees, you actually need a higher air temperature to kind of make up for the cooling effect of the water?
Exactly. It's a tiny but super important detail.
Aye.
A lot of beginners, they miss this. They might monitor the air temperature super carefully,
Right.
but then they totally neglect to actually measure the substrate temperature.
Right.
And that can lead to, less than ideal conditions for the larva.
So it goes back to what you were saying earlier about having that systematic approach.
Yes.
If you're not like meticulously tracking every single variable, you could be missing something crucial that would totally impact your success.
For sure. And they have similar advice about humidity, too.
Really?
Again, it's about focusing on the moisture in the substrate itself rather than just the, overall humidity in the air.
So it's not just about like creating a humid environment.
Right.
It's about making sure the substrate has just the right amount of moisture.
Yep.
What's their advice on actually achieving that balance?
Okay, so get this. They recommend keeping the substrate as wet as possible, but not too wet.
Okay, that sounds real vague. I mean, what does that actually mean in practice?
Yeah, it does sound a little cryptic, right? It's about finding that sweet spot where the larvae have enough moisture to thrive,
Mm-hmm.
but there's also enough structure in that substrate so they can moving on and breathe.
I see.
If the substrate is too wet, the larvae can basically drown.
Oh, wow.
And if it's too dry, they'll dehydrate.
So it really is a delicate balance.
Yeah.
It makes me wonder how you would even begin to like maintain that balance in an outdoor setup,
Uh-huh.
especially when you're dealing with, weather and all that.
Right. They actually have some really great tips for that.
Okay.
We can get into those later.
Okay.
But first, I wanted to touch on another really interesting point. They kind of debunk a very common myth about CO2 levels and how they affect black soldier fly larvae.
This is the part that really surprised me when I watched the webinar.
Yeah,
I always thought that lower CO2 levels were better for insects, like in general.
that's a pretty common misunderstanding.
Yeah,
The webinar explains that black soldier fly larvae are much more tolerant of higher CO2 levels than people realize.
really?
Yeah, they can actually thrive in environments with CO2 concentrations of up to 7,000, maybe even 8,000 parts per million.
Wow, that's much higher than I expected. But you said there's like a key factor here.
Right. The key is stability. If those CO2 levels remain pretty stable, the larvae can adapt. And they'll do great.
Okay,
But if there are any sudden spikes or drops in CO2, that can be a problem.
interesting. So it's not just the absolute number. It's about avoiding any drastic fluctuations.
Yeah.
It seems like all these subtle things, they all work together to create that optimal environment for black soldier fly farming.
Exactly. And this is really just scratching the surface of what this webinar covers.
Wow, okay.
They go into like very specific strategies for both outdoor and climate-controlled setups,
Okay.
and they offer a ton of advice and insights to help you make a really good decision about your own farm.
This is a lot of information already.
Right.
I'm eager to learn more about those specific strategies, though,
Yeah.
especially for those outdoor setups.
Okay.
Before we dive into all that, should we take a quick break?
Actually, before we get into the specifics, there's one more thing I wanted to highlight from the webinar.
Okay.
They really encourage viewers to visit the Insect Farm Hub.
Oh, right.
It's like they're saying, hey, this webinar's just the beginning. Come and see what else we have.
I love that.
And the best part, it's completely free to join. So if you're liking what you're hearing and you want to learn even more about black soldier fly farming, we highly recommend you check it out.
Absolutely. We both use the Insect Farm Hub and recommend it all the time. We'll put a link in the show notes.
Perfect.
Okay, now that we've plugged the Insect Farm Hub,
Yes.
let's get back to those strategies for outdoor setups.
Yeah.
What are some of the big takeaways, for people who aren't ready to go all in on climate control just yet?
Okay, so they actually have a whole section in the webinar on how to make your outdoor setup as successful as possible.
Okay.
Even if you have, very little investment.
Right.
It's all about kind of working with your environment instead of trying to completely control it.
Okay, yeah.
So like they suggest building a pretty simple structure, with a roof and walls
Okay.
to protect it from the elements a little bit.
Yeah, like creating a microclimate
Exactly.
that's more suited to the larvae.
And they say that even with that very basic structure, you can actually make a huge difference
Okay,
just by, really diligently monitoring the conditions inside.
right.
So again, it's all about checking those moisture levels in the substrate frequently
Mm-hmm.
and then add a bit of wet material as needed.
To keep it in that sweet spot.
Right? As wet as possible, but not too wet.
Right. I'm sensing a theme here.
Oh, yeah.
It's all about observation and adjustment.
Yep.
Whether it's temperature or humidity or CO2, the key is to really pay attention to what's happening on your farm
Yes,
and then make adjustments based on what you see.
absolutely.
It seems almost intuitive, but I bet people forget.
Oh, definitely. And because outdoor farming is so unpredictable, they actually have another really great tip.
Okay.
They recommend having a backup source for either eggs or larvae,
Oh, okay.
just in case your breeding cycle gets messed up by, heavy rain or weird temperatures.
That's a great idea. It's like an insurance policy for your farm.
Yeah, exactly.
If something totally unexpected happens, you don't have to start over completely from scratch.
Exactly. And speaking of being prepared,
Yeah.
they had this other interesting tip for people who are farming outdoors.
Okay.
They said to focus on producing hold-right larvae.
Hold right larva. I'm not sure I've heard that term before.
Yeah, so basically it means larvae that are the perfect age for processing and storage.
Okay.
So not too young, not too old, just right.
Okay. I
You're
see.
ready to be harvested and turned into all those valuable products.
Right. But why is that particularly helpful for outdoor farming?
So it lets you create a buffer.
Okay.
It's like a safety net, so you can still send orders out to your customers,
Uh-huh.
even if your production kind of dips for whatever reason.
I see.
Weather, other unforeseen stuff.
Like if there's a week of crazy rain and your breeding cycle gets messed up.
Exactly. If you have a bunch of those hold-right larvae ready to go, you can still fulfill orders while you wait for the breeding to get back to normal.
That's so smart. It's like having a reserve of finished product ready.
Yep.
It gives you a lot more flexibility and control.
Yeah.
Which is especially important, when you're dealing with nature and all its surprises.
It's so true. So even though this webinar talks a lot about the advantages of climate control, it's also great because it makes it very clear that you can still be really successful,
Yep.
even with an outdoor setup.
As long as you manage it well.
Right. It's about figuring out what's the best way to do things based on, your resources, your goals, and what you're comfortable with.
Yeah, I love that they don't try to push one approach over the other.
Yeah,
It's all about giving people the information they need to make a good choice for themselves.
for sure.
That's what we're all about here on the Deep Dive.
Exactly.
So, for our listeners who are interested in checking out those climate-controlled setups,
Yeah.
the webinar goes into a lot of detail about the different options, right?
Oh, yeah, a ton of detail.
Okay, cool.
They actually break down climate-controlled modules into 3 different levels.
Okay.
Starting with a really basic, budget-friendly one that I think pretty much anyone could do.
Okay, that sounds interesting. What does that entry-level climate control look like?
Okay, so imagine a greenhouse.
Yeah.
Maybe one you already have.
Yeah.
And then you equip it with some simple things.
Okay.
Like a heater, dehumidifier, a few fans to get the air moving around, and some basic ventilation.
Okay.
You could even add insulation using, stuff like styrofoam or plywood.
So it doesn't have to be like super high-tech and expensive?
No, not at all. They actually think this could be done for around $2,000 to $3,000.
Wow, that's not bad at all.
Right.
But I guess it would be more hands-on.
It would be, yeah.
You have to do more monitoring and adjusting manually.
Yeah, for sure. But it's still a huge step up from just relying on whatever happens outdoors.
Yeah, it's like dipping your toes into climate control without, spending a fortune.
Exactly.
I like that they offer all these different options. It shows that climate control doesn't have to be scary and out of reach.
Right, exactly. And then they move on to what they call a mid-level setup,
Okay.
which adds, a little bit more control, and it's a little fancier.
Okay, walk me through this mid-level option. What would that involve?
So picture this. You have a dedicated module.
Okay.
Maybe it's built inside a warehouse space that already has some temperature regulation, So you're
Okay.
starting with a more controlled environment, and then you build the module itself inside that.
Uh-huh.
Maybe using sandwich panels for extra insulation or something.
Okay, I see.
They say just the structure could be around $3,000.
Got it. So it's like a module within a module?
Yeah, kinda.
What about the equipment? Does it get more complex at this level?
It does a little bit.
Okay.
They recommend using, slightly more powerful things like a bigger dehumidifier, bigger AC unit,
Right.
those industrial grade fans that you see in a lot of warehouses.
Yeah.
But again, they emphasize that you don't have to go crazy and buy super expensive specialized equipment.
So you're basically just upgrading the equipment to match the bigger scale and control of the module itself.
Right.
What's the overall cost for this mid-level setup?
They estimate somewhere between $6,000 and $12,000.
Okay.
It depends on what equipment you choose and if you need to make changes to the existing space.
Uh-huh.
But they say it can really pump out the product.
Oh, yeah.
They estimate this kind of setup can process like 15 to 17 tons of bio-waste per month.
Wow, that's a lot.
Right. And that would give you around 3 tons of live larvae
Okay.
and 3 tons of frass.
Frass. Remind me what that is again?
Oh, right. Sorry. It's basically insect poop.
Oh, right.
But before you get grossed out, it's super valuable.
Okay.
It's an amazing fertilizer.
Right, right. Okay, so this mid-level module, it sounds like a pretty good balance between cost and output.
Yeah,
You're getting a lot more products without spending a ton of money.
for sure. And for this setup, they really suggest using their M-Mine control system.
Oh, yeah.
Remember we talked about that earlier?
Yes. It's the one that, like, automates everything,
Right.
and it saves you energy in the long run.
Exactly. It takes out a lot of the guesswork
Okay.
and a lot of the manual work that goes into, keeping that perfect environment for larvae.
Right.
And it really helps when you're scaling up.
Yeah, it's like having, like, a silent partner working behind the scenes
Yep.
to make sure everything's running smoothly. I can see why they're so enthusiastic about that system.
They see it as like the key to the growth and professionalization of the whole black soldier fly farming industry.
Wow.
I mean, it's pretty impressive.
Okay, so for those who are, like, totally ready to commit,
Yeah,
they have another level of climate-controlled setup, right?
they do. You're talking about the top tier option.
Yeah, like the ultimate black soldier fly paradise.
It's the one in the shipping container.
Yes. Tell me more about this black soldier fly farm on wheels.
Okay, so basically it's a totally self-contained module,
Okay.
climate controlled, and you can take it anywhere.
Wow.
So it's great for R&D, pilot projects,
Uh-huh.
or even just to get started if you don't have a permanent location for your farm yet.
Yeah, so it's the best of both worlds. You have total control, and you can take it wherever you need to go.
Exactly. But of course, it's the most expensive option.
Yeah, that makes sense. How much does it cost?
They estimate it could be between $8,500 to $13,000.
Wow. Okay. That is a pretty big investment.
It is.
But I guess in the right situation, the convenience and portability could be worth it.
Right.
Imagine setting up your farm at a food processing plant
Yeah.
to process their waste right there, or even taking it to different places for like educational purposes.
That's a great idea, and they say that this is where their pro version of the M-Mind system is really amazing.
Okay.
It can do remote monitoring, alarms, and all kinds of data tracking stuff.
Wow.
So you have total control even when you're not physically there at the farm.
It's like having a high-tech command center for your black soldier fly empire.
Exactly, and it just shows you how innovative and sophisticated things are getting in this industry.
Yeah, it's pretty inspiring to see how this field is developing
Uh-huh.
and how companies like Mana Insect are pushing the boundaries.
Yeah, they're not just selling equipment.
Right.
They're creating a whole ecosystem that helps this industry grow and succeed.
Absolutely. And their focus on education is a big part of that.
Totally.
This webinar is a perfect example.
Yeah.
They're so generous in sharing their knowledge and expertise.
They want everyone to be successful.
Exactly. And don't forget about the Insects Farm Hub,
Oh, right.
which is, an amazing resource, and it's free.
It is.
So whether you want to try a simple outdoor setup
Right.
or you're thinking about a high-tech climate-controlled module, the information and support is out there to help you.
Absolutely. And I think one of the most important things we've learned from this webinar
Yeah.
is that success in black soldier fly farming starts with a system.
Right. It's about taking in information, collecting data, and constantly making things better.
Yes.
It's about understanding all those little details about the environment
Right.
and then making smart decisions based on what you learn.
Exactly.
Whether it's temperature, humidity, CO2, it's paying attention and always learning that will help you succeed as a black soldier fly farmer.
That's the key. And remember, it doesn't have to be overwhelming.
Right.
There are so many resources out there to help you.
Like the Insects Farm Hub.
Exactly. So if you're feeling inspired to start your own black soldier fly adventure,
Yeah.
or if you're already doing it and you want to make things even better, go for it.
The world of black soldier fly farming is wide open.
It is.
I'm so excited to see what you all create.
Me too.
It's really cool to see how much they care about helping people get into black soldier fly farming.
Yeah, it's not just about making money for them.
Right. It seems like they really understand that the whole industry will only be successful if everyone shares what they know.
Exactly. And that comes across in everything they do, like the webinars, the Insect Farm Hub.
Oh, yeah. Speaking of the Insect Farm Hub,
What were you going to say?
well, they have that marketplace there, right?
Oh, yeah, where you can buy and sell all kinds of black soldier fly stuff.
It's like the place to go for anything black soldier fly related.
Totally. You can find live larvae, dried larvae,
Oil, meal.
everything. Even experts offering training if you need help.
It's wild to think about how this tiny little bug is at the center of such a big, growing industry.
It really is.
I'm so glad we did this deep dive. I feel like I learned a ton, and I'm honestly pretty excited about the possibilities.
Me too. It's awesome to see how much innovation is happening, and it's great that there are so many people dedicated to making the world more sustainable with these bugs.
Well said. Huge thanks to Mana Insect for putting together such a great webinar and the Insect Farm Hub.
Definitely.
They're really leading the way toward a future where we have enough food for everyone and it's all sustainable.
Couldn't agree more.
So to wrap things up, if you want to explore the world of black soldier fly farming for yourself, definitely go check out the Insect Farm Hub.
The link's in the show notes.
The full webinar's over there, and it has even more info and practical tips than we could cover today.
And if you have any questions after listening to all this, don't be shy.
Yeah, reach out to us.
We love to share what we know and help people navigate this awesome and always changing field.
We'll be back next week with another deep dive into something new and fascinating. Until then, keep those questions coming and happy farming.